This call is now being recorded.
Hey, it's Randy, and this is episode 8 of my Jailhouse podcast here. And today's November 12th, and I know that, November 12th, 2021, and I know that because I had court scheduled for today, but of course they didn't take me. So as usual, I'm being kept in the dark. It seems that the only hearings they take me to are the ones where I'm trying to fire my attorney, and then they talk me out of it because no one seems to go to court here, or very rarely. So now I had a hearing last week, and on November 2nd, and we discussed the fact that I still have been denied my Sixth Amendment right to be informed of the nature or the cause of the charges against me, that I still haven't seen discovery. This is a case that's over 5 years old, and still no discovery. I've been asking on the record several times. I'm going to have to get transcripts and post them, because on March 31st, I said it. That was the last time I went to court. Then again last week on November 2nd, 2021. And, it's ridiculous. Last week they talked about plea offer. How can I plead guilty when I don't even know what I'm being charged with? And this is what goes on in Florida, and especially in certain counties like Lee County and St. Lucie, but it's horrible here in St. Lucie. Now, the judge said that they'd be open to doing an offer that's contingent upon if the Lee County conviction gets reversed, my plea would get reversed. And, I'm open to doing that just to get the hell out of here and go to prison already, because being in these county jails is awful. You're locked in a dungeon all day. You don't get to go out and get daylight. You don't move around. You can't get a real law library. And that's how they get people to take deals. There's people sitting here right now for over 4 years on possession charges that carry 5 years, so they're going to end up doing more time than they would if they just went to prison, because they don't get access to gain time for good behavior or anything like that in the county jail. A guy last week said he had asked his attorney a couple of questions. The attorney got mad at him and said, "Why don't you just represent yourself?" And the guy said, "No, listen, man, I'm just asking some questions. Are we doing depositions? Can we go to trial?" And the guy said his attorney told him, David Kaplan, who's one of the regional counsel attorneys, told him, "Well, it takes 2 to 4 years for felony cases to go to trial right now." That's insane, because the United States Constitution and the state statutes allow us to have a right to speedy trial. So these attorneys are waiving that right without even telling anyone. And I'm going to talk about that more another time, but, on misdemeanor cases, you should go to trial within 90 days. On felony cases, you should go to trial within 175 days. But if you have a court-appointed attorney in St. Lucie County, they waive that right without telling you, and then they make it sound like you can't demand it back later, which is not true, because you have 2 speedy trials. You have the one that's automatic, and then you have the one that you can demand later. So the point is, how do you have a speedy trial date of 175 days for felony cases, yet people are sitting here 2 to 4 years or longer? I mean, I've got guys in here that have been here 4 or 5 years. There's something wrong, and I don't know why this county's not getting investigated. At the hearing, we also talked about a conflict of interest and having me moved because the sheriff is one of my alleged victims, and I've been having problems with his deputies for 2 years now. Anastasia Norman is one of my alleged victims, and she's a prosecutor for the state attorney's office, and she tries cases in the very courtroom that I'm in. So she's in front of this judge all the time. She works for the state, and she's a prosecutor. And then we have, for some reason, the St. Lucie County Clerk of Court, Joseph Smith, is an alleged victim because somehow I did something to him, which I have no clue how, but he's the one who controls the docket and what's seen to the public. So, again, this is the same stuff that went on in Lee County, and it doesn't seem that you can get a change of venue because they base it on the media attention. So in Lee County, we had the judges who were the alleged victims, the judges who control the court. They had their colleagues presiding over the case. They had the prosecutors that they work with on a daily basis doing whatever they want and getting away with it. And I couldn't get a change of venue there. So I'm sure It's not going to happen here. I mean, to give you an idea of how hard it is to get a change of venue, I mean, the Derek Chauvin case with I'm sorry, I had a lot of coffee today. In other words, the George Floyd case with that cop Chauvin or whatever his name is, they couldn't get a change of venue with all the publicity around that. But here's what I want to talk about because, all right, so Ken Mascara is the St. Lucie County Sheriff, but he's kind of taken a back seat, and until he retires, and his chief deputy Brian Hester, who's second in command, is basically running the sheriff's office right now, right? So Mascara says he's not seeking re-election, and Brian Hester is planning on running for sheriff. Well, earlier this year, on February 7th, 2021, Ryan Hester, who's the 19-year-old son of the chief deputy, was drunk when he killed the 32-year-old first-time mother, Claudia Crone Bradley, in a head-on collision. Now, they show video footage of the 19-year-old Ryan in a bar drinking with a bunch of empty beer bottles on his table, and he's showing off and laughing to the tables around him about all the empty beer bottles, about a dozen of them or more. I'm sure he was with friends. And shortly after, he leaves the bar and kills Claudia Bradley, the young mother, first-time mother. Now, without even getting a ruling for a judge and without a motion, the St. Lucie County State Attorney contacted the Palm Beach County State Attorney, and they had the case moved to Palm Beach because they said Daddy Hester works too closely with the state attorney, so there's a conflict. Really? It just so happens that the guy's running for sheriff, so he doesn't want the publicity of his son being tried for killing someone in a vehicular homicide, DUI homicide. So, yet in my case, we have Anastasia Norman, we have Mascara, we have the clerk of court. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, and this goes on all the time, man. I don't even know what to say. So I encourage anyone to track this Ryan Hester case. It's in Palm Beach right now. It's a 2021 case. And, I was locked up with a guy for a while, a young man from Alabama. He just got married, just bought a home, never was in trouble in his entire life, not even a speeding ticket. Now, he came to Florida and got a job. His family was still in Alabama. But he had a contract to do a job out, down here. And his first day in town, he actually went out to a bar drinking, and he actually had a DUI homicide, and the person, he killed someone in the vehicle. Now, it's sad, and it's sad on all counts, and the victim's family actually went to his sentencing hearing on his behalf and said, go easy on the guy, he made a mistake. Well, he pled out to the judge because he didn't want to risk going to trial, and he got 20 years. The guy without a criminal history. Now, it was a 14 years and 6-year probation, so it was a split sentence, but at the end of the day, it all totals up to 20 years. But he's going to do 14 years, and he's in prison right now. I'm not saying he shouldn't. I mean, he should definitely have to pay for his mistake. He killed someone. But do you think Ryan Hester is going to pay the same way that this young man from Alabama did? Or do you think he's going to get a break? My guess is he's going to walk out on probation and get blessed by Palm Beach. But, again, who knows? I don't know for sure. But I just hope there's some kind of justice for Claudia Bradley, her young child who's now without a mother and her family because, there's obvious favoritism here. But anyway, I just wondered, if it's like the law of attraction because I'm reading this John Grisham book, The Confession, and it's kind of I like Grisham books, and they make great movies. If you've ever seen A Time to Kill or The Firm or Rainmaker, he's got a bunch of them, and they're he's an attorney and he writes some really good stuff, and a lot of it has to do with the corruption in the system, and he writes non-legal stuff. Christmas at the Cranks was a funny movie. I read the book Skipping Christmas. That's also John Grisham. But the point is, I'm reading the Confession. I've never read this book before. I've read a lot of his stuff, and it takes place in Texas, but it's about a guy who gets wrongly convicted for a murder. He's got an alibi. There's no evidence, no anything. But he's a black kid and it's a white girl, and this is This is in an area of Texas where that's frowned upon, apparently. These places in like the 90s or something, so it's not even that old. But anyway, the point is, you see the level of corruption, and this guy's about to get executed on the electric chair, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. This might even be a movie too. I'm not sure. I'm so out of touch with kind of mainstream stuff. But anyway, so he's trying to get the execution stopped because it turns out the one witness completely lied. The state put him up to it. That kind of sounds familiar. And the real killer is now stepping forward, but doesn't want to completely step forward because even though he's dying of cancer, he doesn't want to be exposed and spend the rest of his life in prison or something like that. So then in today's newspaper, I start reading about what they call the Groveland Four, and this is a case back from 1949, and this is kind of crazy because Groveland 4 takes place in the small town of Groveland in Lake County, Florida, back in like 1949, and this is a true story. And these four black men, Ernest Thomas, Charles Greenlee, Samuel Shepard, and Walter Irvin, were accused of beating a 17-year-old woman and her husband and raping the woman. Now, without any physical evidence, without much evidence of a crime at all men were convicted and sentenced to, well, I don't know, I think a couple of them were sentenced to life, and two of them, Irvin and Shepard, were sentenced to death. Now, one guy who was, matter of fact, I don't even think he was actually killed by he was killed shortly after the indictment. So I want to say that was Thomas. So Ernest Thomas was killed by a vigilante shortly after the indictment. And Greenlee died in prison in 2012. And Sam Shepard and Walter Irvin, this is kind of crazy. So the Supreme Court overturned the conviction and brought it back for another trial. So during transport, the notorious sheriff at the time, this guy Willis McCall, actually shot both of the men, shot Shepard and Irvin, claiming that they attacked him. Right? So Irvin lived and Shepard died. And then the case was basically forgotten about until 2013, when a book called The Devil in the Grove by Gilbert King won a Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction. Right? So I guess that kind of brought it to life again. The point is, a few years after the book, the Florida legislation actually, through some kind of resolution, exonerated the men, and but by then they all died anyway. They all died in prison. Unfortunately, that doesn't give me much hope. So I guess maybe 72 years from now, someone will decide that there was foul play and corruption in my case. So if I live to be 120, maybe I'll see some justice, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, Rick Scott, who was the governor, refused to actually act on the exoneration, even though the men had died, but Governor Ron DeSantis made it a priority to formally pardon all four of the men. Again, they were all dead by then. But what I've learned is that the pardon by the governor is really only a ceremonial thing, because the legislature nor the governor can actually officially overturn a conviction. So anyway, I'm just kind of weird how I'm reading this Grisham book and then I read this article in the paper today about the Groveland Four. But it's disturbing because the state attorney in the Fifth Circuit over in Lake County, this guy Bill Gladson, he's apparently a pretty stand-up guy. So I wish he was involved in my case, but Mr. Gladson filed a motion to drop all charges. So despite the pardon and exoneration, the case has officially been dropped because Mr. Gladson filed a motion to drop all charges. But he called this case corrupt at its core, referring to the prosecutor at the time, Brad King, who was his predecessor back from 1949. So who knows? Maybe 70 years from now, the prosecutor is going to look back at James Miller and see the corruption and the crime that he's committed, along with his colleagues at the state attorney's office. But anyway, so I'm a little bit worked up today. I read these things and it makes me a little crazy. But other than that, what else was in the newspaper? Oh yeah, our drinking water is pretty contaminated. So here in Fort Pierce, there's 81 times more arsenic than is supposed to be allowed by whatever the environmental working group is, the EWG. 441 times more radium, 4 times more chromium. And so the long-term effects of this type of drinking water and what's in it can be cancer of the lungs, bladder, skin. So, yeah, that's some more positive stuff, which isn't really surprising. I mean, who knows what's being dumped into the rivers and streams right now. But yeah, so I'm still in the dark, no court date, not getting really much uplifting news when I read about cases like these guys back in 1949. And, this corruption's been going on in the system for a long, long time, and it doesn't seem like much can be done about it, outside of hopefully the Supreme Court doing the right thing and everything else. But, that's time and money. And despite all the evidence I've got, a lot of attorneys don't want to touch my case, or they want to charge a ridiculous amount, and they're not going to fight anyway. And and they did this on purpose. That's why they're stacking all of these charges. Like what I've got going on here in St. Lucie, it's the same thing they did in Lee County. They stacked a bunch of charges for a single episode. And what these attorneys do, they charge you per felony. So even though it should only be one charge instead of 9 or 10 or 20 or whatever they do, because they keep stacking it up, these attorneys are going to quote, astronomical figures to represent you. So I'm kind of stuck where I need to rely on my court-appointed attorney, he's a private attorney, he's a conflict attorney, but he's not doing anything for me at the time, just giving me lip service, and we don't see eye to eye. I've found a lot of stuff, and he keeps saying I'm not an attorney. Well, I'm also not an idiot, and I could read case law, and I see so many problems going on, but he knows this stuff better than me, so I have to trust him. I don't ever want to deal with trying to handle a trial again or
You have 1 minute remaining.
I don't want to ever do that stuff again, but so I have to trust him until I can find someone else, or unless I can find somebody else. But again, if they make me an offer that's good enough, I might have to do it just to get out of here, because this is miserable and they'll drag it out forever. But anyway, that's kind of my rant for today. I guess that's about it. But thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. Anyone out there who's assisted in any way, I appreciate all the family and friends that have been there for me. And keep an eye on that Ryan Hester case in Palm Beach. I'm curious to see what happens there. All right. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for using GTL.